In our last video, we explained how Georgia's gas tax is the only revenue source that we have that currently funds the Georgia Department of Transportation and thus funds our statewide road and bridge network. We talked about how those funds have been redirected for decades to other sources other than our roads and bridges, and thus we have a huge spending backlog and needs backlog for transportation, leaving Georgia last in the country in per capita spending for our roads and bridges. When we start talking about new projects and new funding, much of the talk immediately goes to what can we get for this money? What are we going to spend it on roads? Are we going to spend it on transit? Before we can even have that debate, we need to understand that these decades of underfunding ourselves and misappropriating funds that should have been used for transportation has left us, frankly, with a backlog in maintenance. And so for the purpose of this video, we're going to first talk about how much we have to pay just to maintain all of these roads and bridges that we all like to say we've already paid for. To maintain our roads in good or fair condition, Georgia should be repaving them about every 7 to 15 years. We're not coming close to that, and it's beginning to show. To stay on target, Georgia would need to repave about 8% of its lane miles every year. Last year, Georgia resurfaced less than 2% of all of our lanes, and this year our projections are that we're going to be under 1%. This problem is compounded once a road reaches poor condition, where extensive damage to the road surface has grooves and ruts and other imperfections that just a simple repaving will no longer suffice. The repaving then really becomes more of a rebuild than a resurface, and that increases the replacement cost of that road dramatically. GDOT's projections show us that under current spending, only a quarter of our roads will be in fair or better condition within 10 years. Additional funding to return us to a normal maintenance schedule would allow us to eliminate most of our roads rated bad while preserving about the same percentage of roads rated fair or better over the next 20 years. In order to resume a normal maintenance schedule, GDOT estimates that we need additional $128 million per year to maintain our roads in good or fair condition. Where Georgia has really deferred its maintenance obligations is in our bridge system. Georgia's bridges are aging, and many are in need of replacement, while many more need significant repair. GDOT estimates there are 1,622 state-owned bridges that need to be replaced over the next 20 years at a cost of $322 million per year every year. In addition, there are 2,450 locally owned bridges that need to be replaced over those same 2 decades. That's an additional $240 million burden to replace 107 bridges per year, and that's currently unfunded. Between the state-owned bridges and locally owned bridges, Georgia should be replacing over 200 bridges per year. In 2014, GDOT replaced only 60 bridges. So the funding needed to get us back to schedule over just the next 20 years to bring Georgia's bridges up to standard will require an additional $456 million per year, every year for the next 2 decades based on GDOT's estimates. GDOT has additional financial needs beyond the capital requirements for our roads and bridges that are currently unfunded. Traffic operations, for instance, those are the things that fund incident management, those hero units that we see driving around Atlanta's freeways. That program is underfunded by $35 million a year right now based on GDOT's estimates. The state also has responsibility for maintenance on runways at the state's airports, and that is currently underfunded by $30 million per year. The Department of Transportation also owns and operates several short-line railroads throughout the state. Those railroads need an additional $836 million capital upgrade and improvement over the next 20 years, which breaks down to about $42 million per year to keep Georgia's rails operating smoothly. Then there's all those things that GDOT does, such as salting and clearing roads during winter weather, cutting grass in medians and on right-of-ways, removing vegetation, maintaining signage, operating the welcome centers, repairing and replacing guardrails, maintaining sound barriers along our freeways. There's all those other things that currently are just the general operation and overhead that it takes to operate the Department of Transportation. Currently, the Department of Transportation spends about $200 million a year on these items, and they estimate that, frankly, to keep up to speed with general designs and, frankly, the way that we're traditionally used to keeping up with our road system, they need an additional $200 million a year more to maintain the standards that Georgians expect. So to summarize all of these needs based on the Georgia Department of Transportation's current financial estimates, we're going to break it down like this. They need $128 million per year for repaving. They need $456 million per year for bridge maintenance. They need $35 million a year for traffic operations, $30 million a year for runway maintenance, and $42 million for rail maintenance. Then there's the cost of just operating the department, and they estimate that, frankly, the need is an additional $200 million a year. That's $691 million per year, every year, for the next 2 decades, just in maintenance cost, before we even start talking about new projects. Could we do this for less? Certainly. We're doing it now, but we can't do that forever. But let's go ahead and take a look at GDOT's own numbers and see if there's even some money that we think we could possibly cut out of that. What's the bare minimum number to get us on our normal maintenance schedule? Well, on resurfacing existing roads, there really isn't much to be saved in their budget numbers. This is kind of a pay me now or pay me later kind of figure. So let's go ahead and accept their number of $128 million because we know if we defer these maintenance figures much longer, the cost at the end of the day will cost us more than it will now just to maintain the roads on a 7 to 15 year repaving schedule. As for the other maintenance numbers, let's presume Georgia catches up over a 30-year period instead of a 20-year period. Given that bridges should have a 75-year lifespan, that's perhaps not unreasonable. This would change the capital need for bridge replacement and maintenance to $300 million a year. And if we did that same cycle for runway maintenance and rail maintenance, runways we could drop down to $20 million a year, rail maintenance to $28 million a year. Then there's that additional number that GDOT estimates they could spend up to another $200 million a year in overhead. Frankly, there are very few metrics attached to this, so that really is a number that is how often do we really want the grass cut and these other maintenance items. Let's just say at a bare minimum that the cost of doing business as a government is going to increase 5% per year for the next 5 years. And given the amount of additional projects and additional maintenance we're going to be doing with GDOT, I don't think 5% is an unreasonable number at all. If we did that, that would at least give them additional $20 million a year over this period to fund the additional overhead needed to operate these existing projects. So all combined, if we look at a 30-year replacement schedule for bridges as well as the upgrades to runways and to rail and keep GDOT's paving number at $128 million a year, we're looking at GDOT's additional need for maintenance and maintenance only of an additional $520 million per year every year just to maintain this system that we like to tell ourselves that we've already paid for. That's not for new roads. That's not for new transit. We need over $500 million of additional money every year just to maintain our current system.
And so there it is. Georgia needs over $500 million of additional money every year for the next 20 to 30 years just to maintain and operate the system of roads and bridges that we currently have before we even start to talk about new projects. $500 million. It's important that we understand this need before we even start to argue about prioritizing new construction money and where that money might go, either geographically or into what type and mode of transportation. We understand that's where most want to start this conversation, but before we do, it would be irresponsible not to understand that we have to maintain an additional investment every year just to protect what the investment in transportation infrastructure that we already have. After that's done, then we can talk about how it's best to fund additional improvements. Again, I want to thank you for investing some of your time in learning more about how we currently fund Georgia's transportation system and what the need is. We look forward to you hopefully sharing this with your friends and neighbors on social media as we, again, try to get the word out to truly understand where we are as a state so we can make the best decisions going forward. Thank you for taking the time, and hope you have a great day.